Chapter 43:13. This vision of the master of Daewoo Temple seemed to come through the floods of the universe and fell on Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang actually felt that in this sight, the gods were almost collapsed and his heart was cold. Who is this person? How could I be so powerful? Almost instantaneously, Jian Wushuang determined in his heart that even if he was holding the Taro Excalibur, he would be far from his opponent. You are the sword unparalleled. The master of the Daewoo Temple shook the sword Wushuang indifferently. This I seemed to see through the sword Wushuang, and his eyes were slightly different. The origin of the fourth layer of Kendo, a perfect level of special life, plus a Taro Excalibur, these talent opportunities, just a little growth, will pose a fatal threat to my Daewoo Temple. Just kill him, it is too wasteful, it is better to bring him back, to extract the life level, to refine the soul. He shook his head, and the master of the Daewoo Temple said, "Swords are unparalleled, take a trip with this seat." After finishing speaking, the master of Daewoo Shrine extended his hand and gently grasped with 5 fingers. In an instant, the void seemed to form an invisible big hand, lifting the sword unparalleled. And the other 3 supreme masters, already long after the master of the Daewoo Temple arrived, they shrank aside, trembling like a chill. He was at the moment when the master of Daewoo Shrine lifted his sword, and was about to leave. A shocking roar suddenly exploded in the sky. Where is this seat? Who dares to take away sword unparalleled? A blood-colored lightning burst from a distance. This scarlet lightning was almost at the extreme, and it took almost just a moment to fall in front of Jian Wushuang, and with a big wave of his hand, he directly crushed the big hand of the master of Daewoo Temple. For this person, it is truly a blood wave that comes out of nowhere at all cost. Blood wave supreme. Wu Jianshou looked at the back of Wei Yan who was standing in front of him. He was moved for a while, and couldn't help but shout softly. Blood wave supreme heard the words, turned his head and looked at Jian Wushuang. He glanced up and down at Jian Wushuang, feeling that Jian Wushuang's body was exhausted, and his eyes could not help but pour out endless regrets. It's too late to make you suffer. Wu Jianshuang heard the words and forced a smile on him, saying, "It's not too late, it's me, it's trouble for you." Zun Shuebua Supreme also smiled back, stretched out his hands and rubbed the sword of Wushuang's hair, like the most kind elders, and spoiled the most beloved younger ones. His eyes were full of appreciation and comfort. What trouble is not trouble? When this seat took you back to the Temple of Life, I promised you that you entered my Temple of Life, and this seat protects you forever. Little one, leave the rest to me. After that, Supreme Bloody took a deep breath, turned abruptly, and looked coldly towards the main lord of the Daewoo Temple and the 3 supreme supremes. Morihan said, "This seat is here, if you want to take away the sword, please first step on this seat, a terrifying atmosphere, enough to make chaos boil and shatter the horror, rising from the blood wave supreme body. Under this breath, the 3 supremes are simply frightened quails, their legs trembling for a while." Good. The old woman's face changed dramatically. Only the master of Daewoo Shrine, undifferentiated, looked at Bloodwave Supreme indifferently, and said, "Bloodwave, it's up to you, and you can't protect Jian Wushuang." Zun Shuebua Supreme heard a cold hum, his cold warfare was captured in his eyes, and he said, "You can't protect yourself, it's not you who cares, the first battle is." Seeing this, the main hall of Daewoo Shrine sighed, "Blood, this seat wanted to spare you life at the beginning, to stay with you for a few more days. Since you have to kill yourself, let's bury it with Jian Wushuang." After he finished speaking, he tore his hands apart and took out a 3-foot-long destroying spear directly from the void. This extermination spear is similar to the extinction spear in the hand of the Black Hawk Supreme, but it is completely different, because this extermination spear is too powerful and too much, and the destruction of the breath is not as good as Tai Luo the Excalibur is too weak, and the heart of this extermination spear seems to be beating. Seeing the blood wave supreme, the heart couldn't help it. "Blood, come on, let me see if you have improved over the years." The master of the Daewoo Temple shook his head and waved his right hand gently. For a while, the exterminating spear stabbed towards the supreme blood wave. This thorn seems to be ordinary and contains no power. It seems that any ultimate master can take it, but the blood of the supreme is dignified to the extreme. Broken. Blood wave 2-finger seal. drink a cold drink. Suddenly, there were 3 pillars of heavenly blood behind him. This pillar of blood was like a tornado of 3 heavens and earth, and the power was terrifying. The 3 pillars of heavenly blood have not yet exhibited mighty power, huge coercion has spread and swept away, and the void collapses at the same time. Rewind. The faces of the 3 Lotus Island masters changed greatly, and they were also in the state of supremacy, but under this coercion, they actually felt as small as the ants. He is a sword unparalleled, and under the special care of the supreme bloodwave, he doesn't feel any pressure. A shocking sound came. Suddenly, the seemingly stabbing extermination spear collided with the 3 pillars of the blood of the heavens, and the terror power that was difficult to describe in words broke out. As the universe is plunged into a calamity, a mighty power that destroys the world rises, and just howling wind hangs under the collision is enough to tear any ultimate master. There was a medium starfield around them, but it was only scratched by the aftermath of these 2 collisions, and the entire starfield burst directly. This is exactly the battle between God and God. A huge shockwave shock spreads out brilliant. Everybody closed their eyes subconsciously. The same is true for Jian Wushuang. Under the confrontation between the Supreme Master of the Blood and the Lord of the Daewu Temple, he only felt that he was so small, like a mortal ant, looking up at the heaven-going who was standing for 9 days. Even holding the Taro Excalibur is a far-reaching realm. After the shock wave dissipated, it was not until half a moment later that everyone opened their eyes slowly. Qi Jian Wushuang hurriedly looked towards the Bloodwave Supreme, and saw that the sleeves of Bloodwave Supreme's right hand were all cracked and his face was pale. Bloodwave Supreme. Immediately, Jian Wushuang couldn't help it anymore, roared loudly, his eyes were flushed. This seat anyway. Zun Shuebua Extreme reached out his hand and posed it quite difficult, signaling that nothing was going on. Bloodwave, it seems that you are a lot stronger than the last war. However, the main owner of Daewu Shrine shrank a little and said, "Don't look at him as if it was an understatement blow. In fact, just now the blow was extremely dangerous, hiding his 80% strength as the invincible Supreme, and the ordinary top Supreme could not be reached at all." Bloodwave Supreme forcibly suppressed the boiling burning force in the god body, raised his head to look at the main hall of Daewu Shrine, and took a deep breath. "Kurowa, talk nonsense. No matter what, today, this seat will accompany you to the end." Chapter 43:14. Blood, you're cutting your way. The master of Daewu Temple shook his head, and then a cruel smile came to his face. "That being the case, Blood, your deity satisfies you." The words fell, and the spear of the gods condensed their power again. This time, a horrible breath surged, and at the tip of the spear of the gods, a cold red rim was lit, as if to pierce the sky into a cave. A variety of rules have evolved, and they are entangled in the spear of extermination. At this moment, even the magnetic field of the universe is changed and driven, as if it is about to emerge from the universe. The battle between supremes is a collision between rules. Extreme blood, Tai Luo Excalibur, I gave it to him. Jian Wushuang saw this, clenched his fists tightly, and said, "He knows that it is possible that under this blow, Bloodwave Supreme is in danger of falling." He asked himself since he joined the Temple of Life. He has always been the Bloodwave Supreme to continue to support and protect himself, and what has he brought to Bloodwave Supreme? He has owed too much to Bloodwave Supreme, and must never let Bloodwave Supreme escape his life because of the Tai Luo Divine Sword. Bloodwave Supreme heard the words, turned around and stretched out his hands, and pressed down Jian Wushuang's shoulders vigorously, then shook his head, and said with a serious expression, "Sword Wushuang, Tai Luo Excalibur is your chance. It is your dependence on breaking the Supreme and standing on top of the universe in the future, and you must not hand it over easily." After he finished speaking, Supreme Blood continued to speak in a deep voice, "Sword unparalleled, believe this seat, as long as this seat is still a moment, no one in this world can bully you." Wu Jianshuang heard the words and wanted to say something more. Bloodwave Supreme had turned around. "Bring it on." Zun Zuibo's supreme gaze stared coldly at the master of Daewu Temple. Qi Jian Wushuang looked at the back of Bloodwave Supreme Wei Yan. For the first time, he felt that he was so weak, and hated why his strength was not stronger. At this moment, in the starry sky, a few orns came again. Ha ha ha, Taro Excalibur, finally let the old man find it. Kuroba, do you want to swallow Taro sword alone? Boot, quickly hand over the Taro Excalibur. I saw 3 magpies falling and turned into 3 supreme figures. Extreme South China Sea. Woji Extreme, Deputy Master of the Blood Temple. The host of the Lotus Island was exclaimed. 3 Supremes, strike again. These 3 are all long-established veterans of the universe. They have suppressed the invincible in the universe. Wuji Extreme is the top power in the Supreme, far from their ordinary Supremes. Seeing these 3 men coming, even the master of Daewoo Shrine, his pupils shrank. Bloodwave Supreme is a heart sinking to the bottom of the valley. The Supreme Master who has come to the audience has reached as many as 7. Among them, the Master of Daewoo Shrine is invincible and supreme, and there must be a Supreme Master. Come here. I'm afraid I can't be good today. Zun Xiebua raised his head and looked towards the distant void, and that direction was the direction of the Temple of Life. Today, the only thing that can save them is the Temple of Life. But he has already been circulated to the Temple of Life. He spit out a stale gas. Bloodwave Supreme turned his head to look at Jian Wushuang, and laughed. Little guy, if we fall here today, are you afraid? Wu Jian Wushuang heard the words, his eyes swept across the face of the 7th Supreme, and his heart rose with a mighty pride, and he laughed and said, however, what is the fear? With the procrastination of Bloodwave Supreme, his whole body's divine power has been restored by more than half, enough to perform the Taro Excalibur again. Even if he is dead today, he will drag another supreme funeral. Ha ha ha, what a fear it is. Jian Wushuang, then the 2 of us will fight together today, stir him upside down, fight him to die. Zun Xiebua waved his palm and laughed, a spirit of grandeur burst into the air. He has been in the blood for tens of millions of years. When was there any word of fear in his life? As Jian Wushuang said, how can I be afraid of death? And the 3 new Supremes had already set their eyes greedily on the Taro Excalibur with no hands in the sword. Chen Ziyi changed, kill these 2 people first, and get the Taro Excalibur. Yes, lest night-long dreams, kill these 2 first. The boy named Jian Wushuang, your ultimate master, can provoke our 7 Supreme Masters to kill. Even death is enough to be proud. The 7th Supreme Master has spoken eagerly. The main hall of Daewoo Shrine saw a cold hum. Since some people can shoot together to kill the Bloodwave Supreme and others, he is indispensable. Anyway, he is confident. With his strength, this Taro sword will eventually fall into his hands. Kill. The main hall of the Deputy Hall of the Blood Temple of Heaven opened coldly, stepping on 1 foot, and looted towards the Supreme of Blood and Supreme Master Sword. The other 6 are supreme, and their bodies are also violent. In the blink of an eye, the 7 Supremes, meanwhile slaying swordsman and Bloodwave. The mighty power of horror is like destroying the world and boiling the world. The violent winds directly stirred up numerous space storms. Kill. Bloodwave Supreme saw this, Morihan's murderous flashes in his eyes, and the supreme divine power surged from his body, turning the surroundings directly into a tumbling blood pool. Kill. Wu Jian's eyebrows were cold, but he raised the Tai Luo divine sword, and the Huang Jianwei spread. In the hearts of the 2 of them, the battle against this one was already in the heart of death. I was at this moment, the moment of life and death. Take a huge sharp axe light and slash fiercely from a distance. I, the supreme axe is here. Who dare to hurt my life shrine? With it, there is also a terrifying roar. A gigantic giant, striding from a distance. He is shrouded in the endless chaos of immortality holding a giant axe. In front of him, the sun is like a projectile, Xinghe is like a bathtub, the stars can be removed by raising your hands, and you can step on the feet destroy the earth. Extreme axe, here it is. Soon, it was the second roar. I, the God of Heaven is here. Who dares to hurt my life in the shrine? In the other direction, a middle-aged man with a naked upper body and sharp eyes like a hawk, bends his bow and arrow, releases the arrow string, and a lightning-like godhead blasts out. This arrow instantly cut through the sky, pulling a mighty, long wave of white waves in the universe, directly blasting a planet that was blocked in the middle, once again obliquely destroying the power of heaven and earth, and continued to shoo. I, White Tiger Supreme is here, who dares to hurt my life shrine? The third roar sounded. A star-sized sharp golden white tiger stepped out of the void, screaming in the sky. The sound of terror was deafening, and a mass of murderous gas condensed overwhelmingly, making everything lonely and the people shaking. On this huge white tiger, a middle man in a ferret and a white forehead held a machete and sang a cold drink. The white tiger under his seat opened his mouth and shouted a silence. Light out. In the end, it was an old and indifferent voice, as if through the flood of the universe. At the same time it sounded in everyone's heart. I, Supreme is here, who dares to hurt my life shrine? Chapter 43:15. I, Supreme is here, who dares to hurt me in the temple of life? When this indifferent old voice sounded, suddenly, the 7 Supreme Masters, including the Master of the Daewoo Shrine, all changed their faces. The 5 Chief Supreme Masters of the Shrine of Life have come together. Gaifu is here. The main eyes of the main hall of Daewoo Temple shone wildly. What now and now? Among these 7 people, the weakest Lianshin Island owner is his lips trembling. The 5 Chief Supreme Masters of the Life Shrine, but the top Supreme Masters that have been tempered from numerous battles after experiencing strong winds and wave. Especially Gawaf, they are so ancient that they do not know their origins. Even the most extreme ones in the universe are extremely jealous of Gawaf. Blood, wait a long time. The giant axe came in great strides, as the same Chaos Immortal King came from ancient times. Each step was a tremor of the universe, crushing countless void fragments. Behind him, holding the arrow of the god, as if the heavenly of the arrow came after him, his eyes were sharp like a hawk. I used to, when the universe was still in chaos, during the Battle of the Nation, he shot 9 Jinwoo in succession with 9 arrows in succession. Although he has not scored dozens of chaos ages, no one will doubt his strength. Blood, ill wait coming late. The White Tiger Supreme jumped out, and the sharp golden white tiger beneath him actually had twin pupils. Each step of the foot ignited black flame footprints out of thin air. Between the light changes, looking at the 7 Supremes, more it's like trying to choose someone and eating it, letting the 7 Supremes chill everywhere. They all came together, standing next to the Supreme Bloodwave, and the majestic power rose, as if to crush all eternity and shake for 9 days and 10 places. You guys. Bloodwave Supreme, with a complex expression, a little complex, and wanted to say something, and finally all the words turned into a sound, it is good. Seeing this, the Master of Daewoo Temple suddenly became gloomy to the extreme, but he did not care about the 4 Supremes, but looked away from the void. I was there. An old man with an old face, covered with age spots, and full of decay, was walking step by step. He was expressionless, as if he were the most ordinary old man, but when he took each step, he came directly across the time and space of chaos. Ji Fu Supreme. The strongest person in the Palace of Life, except for the owner who has long disappeared. Hit him, it is the pillar of life of the Palace of Life. Even if the owner of the Palace of Life disappears, as long as he is still sitting in the Palace of Life, then the Palace of Life is the most powerful force in the universe. Gaifu, a sword invincible, even lead you out. The Master of Daewoo Temple shyly said slowly. He Gaofu Supreme expressionless, raised his eyelid and glanced at him, said indifferently, Kuroba, in recent years, your Daewoo Temple has been a bit excessive. Excessive? The Lord of the Daewoo Temple sneered, and his eyes sneered, Gaifu, if this seat is correct, the injuries you left over from that war should not have been okay? Let me guess, now you, how many more shots? 2. Or 3. He never heard a word, but just silently uttered a word. Kill. All of a sudden, the White Tiger Supreme, the Heavenly Supreme, the Giant Axe Supreme, and the Bloodwave Supreme were all in rush. A monstrous war will erupt from the 4. They looked at the Supreme 7, without any timidity, but rather extremely relaxed and heroic. Blood, 4 of us, how long haven't we fought side by side? Great Axe laughed supremely. Zun Shuebwa Supreme smiled slightly and replied, count the time. Since that war, there are nearly hundreds of chaos periods. Shu Tianzuan said nothing, raised his bow in his hand, and a scarlet arrow condensed on his bowstring. And that White Tiger Supreme is the first to head towards the eerie Black Supreme who intercepted Jian Wushuang at the beginning, and smashed away with Baoxiang's solemn man. Blood, nature, giant axe, look at it, these ants will be solved by me. Roar. A huge tiger howl came out, deterring all directions. The white tiger was so proud and supreme, and an air of killing and fighting shook the universe. White tiger, the main palm to kill the felling, and White Tiger Supreme, is the most powerful one out of the endless killing. Ha ha ha, I haven't moved my bones for a long time, leave them to me. The giant axe laughed loudly. The giant axe in his hand broke the ground and cut out a shocking axe light. This axe light was hundreds of thousands of feet long. He smashed a galaxy directly, and then headed towards the strongest person except the main owner of the Daewoo Temple. Promise Extreme cuts fiercely. Zun Xiebua looked at this scene with a smile on his face, as if he had crossed the space and time of the universe, and when the world-famous battle of that year, when they fought side by side, the whole body's blood was boiling. He looked back at Jian Wushuang, and smiled. Jian Wushuang, look at it, how old guys like us can you? Huh. His words fell, and he stepped hard, directly turning into a pillar of heavenly blood, carrying a mighty might, and rushing towards the deputy chief of the Temple of Blood and the supreme master of the South China Sea. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists tightly. At this moment, he only felt a blood boiling in his chest. The power of Shi Zongmen, he felt it for the first time. At this moment, the hundreds of thousands of miles of starry sky nearby were all roared, as if they were caught in a sea of chaos and anger, and the world was mourning. Countless ways of supreme divine magic rise to the sky. The brilliance is spectacular, as if it opened a magnificent epic. Howling. Howling. The sharp gold and white tiger the size of a planet opened his mouth and roared, and the sound waves that destroyed the earth shot out from his mouth, blasting the starry sky out of countless giant pit. Too garbage, dare to come to the idea of my life shrine? The White Tiger Supreme sneered with one enemy and two, and at the same time faced the solemn man in the black clothing Supreme and Baoxiang who first intercepted the sword unparalleled sword. Not only did he lose the slightest bit of wind, but he showed the trend of overbearing and crushing, like the king in charge of killing. World. The sharp gold and white tiger was photographed with one palm, and the various techniques directly blasted by the two were smashed, and the black one was shot tens of thousands. On the other side, the giant axe battles the extremes of the extreme, both of them are the strongest in the top. Under the confrontation, a sudden shock broke out. The whole starry sky shook for a while, and the giant axe was as high as 10,000 meters long, as if transformed into a great ancient god. The left eye is the moon, the right eye is the sun, and the veins protruding from the whole body are towering mountains. Every time he cut down the giant axe in his hand, he carried the power of destroying the earth and destroying the earth, shattering the endless blast of the supreme extreme, and trembling in shape. Come. Kill me. The giant axe shouted loudly, and the battle was crazy, and the presence of the supreme was a chill. That promise of extreme promise is even more ugly, and there is a clear fear in his eyes. Chapter 43:16 Im here. Bloodwave, you're cutting off your own path. The Hall Master of the Great Cosmos Temple shook his head and a cruel smile appeared on his face. Since that's the case, I'll satisfy you, Bloodwave. As soon as he said that, the god-killing spear gathered its power again. This time, a terrifying aura surged. At the tip of the god-killing spear, there was a cold red light, as if it was going to pierce a hole in the sky. All kinds of rules evolved and settled on the god-killing spear. At this moment, even the magnetic field of the universe was changed and triggered, as if the great Tao of the universe was about to emerge. A battle between supreme beings was a clash of laws. Supreme Bloodwave, I'll just give him the Tarot Divine Sword. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang clenched his fists tightly and said. He knew that the ruler Bloodwave was in danger of dying from this attack. He asked himself, ever since I joined the Divine Life Palace, it has always been the ruler Bloodwave who has constantly supported and protected me. What have I brought to the ruler Bloodwave? He had already owed the ruler Bloodwave far, far too much. He couldn't let the ruler Bloodwave risk his life for the sake of the Zenith Sword. When the Bloodwave Supreme heard this, He turned around and stretched out his hand to press down on Jian Wushuang's shoulder. Then, he shook his head and said with a serious expression, "Jian Wushuang, the Tarot Divine Sword is your opportunity. It's also the thing you can rely on to break through to the supreme level and stand at the peak of the universe. You can't hand it over so easily." After saying this, the ruler Bloodwave continued in a deep voice, "Jian Wushuang, believe in me. As long as I'm still alive, no one in this world can bully you." Jian Wushuang wanted to say something, but the Bloodwave Master had already turned around. "Come on." The Bloodwave Supreme glared coldly at the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple. Jian Wushuang looked at the back of the Bloodwave Master. For the first time, he felt so weak and hated himself for not being stronger. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, a few more rays of light appeared in the starry sky. "Ha ha ha, I've finally found the Tarot Divine Sword. Hey you, don't tell me you want to keep the Tarot Divine Sword for yourself. That brat, quickly hand over the Tarot Divine Sword." 3 rays of light descended and turned into 3 supreme figures. The Supreme Being of the Southern Sea, Supreme Wuji, the Deputy Hall Master of Blood Sky Hall. The Island Master of Lotus Heart Island cried out in alarm. The 3 great rulers were attacking again. The 3 of them were all well-known Supreme Masters in the universe. They were all invincible in the universe. Limitless Supreme was a top master among the Supreme Masters, and ordinary Supreme Masters like them could not compare to him. Even the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple was shocked when he saw the 3 of them. The Bloodwave Supreme's heart sank to the bottom. There were already 7 Supremes present, and the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple was an invincible Supreme. There must be more Supremes rushing over from afar. "I'm afraid we won't be able to settle this peacefully today." The ruler Bloodwave raised his head and looked into the distance. He was looking in the direction of the Divine Life Palace. The only thing that could save them now was the Divine Life Palace. He had already sent a message to the Divine Life Palace. Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, the Bloodwave Supreme turned to look at Jian Wushuang and said with a smile, "Little fellow, if we were to die here today, would you be afraid?" Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's eyes swept across the 7 great masters' faces. He suddenly felt a sense of pride and laughed. "It's just death, what's there to fear?" Thanks to the ruler Bloodwave's delay, he had already recovered more than half of his divine power, enough for him to use the Tarot Divine Sword again. Even if he had to die today, he would drag another supreme martial artist down with him. "Ha ha ha, what fear? Jian Wushuang, let's join forces and fight together. We'll turn the world upside down and fight to the death." The ruler Bloodwave clapped his hands and laughed heartily as a heroic aura soared into the sky. His blood waves had swept across the universe for tens of millions of years. When had he ever been afraid? It was just as Jian Wushuang had said. However, what was there to fear about death? As for the 3 new supreme martial artists, they had already cast their greedy eyes on the Tarot Divine Sword in Jian Wushuang's hand. "Things might change if we delay. Let's kill these 2 first and get the Tarot Divine Sword," he thought. "That's right, to prevent any accidents, let's kill these 2 first. Jian Wushuang, you're just an ultimate ruler. You should be proud that you're being hunted down by the 7 of us even if you die." The 7 great supremes spoke one after another, eager to make a move. The Hall Master of Cosmos Temple snorted coldly. Since there were people who could work together to kill the Supreme Bloodwave and the others, he naturally could not do so. After all, he was confident that with his strength, the Tarot Divine Sword would eventually fall into his hands. "Kill." The Deputy Hall Master of Blood Sky Hall said coldly as he took a step forward and charged toward the Bloodwave Supreme and Jian Wushuang. The other 6 supreme martial artists also charged forward. In the blink of an eye, the 7 supreme masters killed Jian Wushuang and Bloodwave at the same time. The enormous and terrifying power seemed to be able to destroy the world, causing the heavens and earth to boil. The violent wind stirred up countless spatial storms. "Kill." Upon seeing this, a cold killing intent flashed across Supreme Bloodwave's eyes. The supreme divine power in his body surged and turned the surrounding area into a churning blood pool. "Kill." Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold. He raised the Tarot Divine Sword, and a brilliant sword power spread out. The two of them were already prepared to die in this battle. Bang! At this moment of life and death, a huge and sharp axe light suddenly hacked down from the distance. I, Supreme Giant Axe, am here. Who dares to hurt the people of my divine life palace? Along with it, there was an earth-shaking roar. A 10 million feet tall rough giant strode over from the distance. He was shrouded in endless chaotic immortal radiance and held a giant axe that could split the sky and earth. In front of him, the sun was like a bullet and the river of stars was like a bathtub. He could pluck the stars with a raise of his hand and destroy the earth with a step. Supreme Being Giant Axe had arrived. Immediately after, a second roar came. I, Ruler Heavenly Dipper, am here. Who dares to hurt the people of my divine life palace? In another direction, a topless middle-aged man with sharp eyes pulled the bowstring and released an arrow. A godly arrow shot out like a lightning bolt. The arrow instantly cut through the sky, leaving a 10,000 feet long white wave in the universe. It directly blew up a planet in its way and continued to shoot forward with destructive power. I, the White Tiger Ruler, am here. Who dares to hurt the people of my divine life palace? A third roar rang out. A star-sized sharp metal white tiger stepped out of the void and roared into the heavens. Terrifying shockwaves were deafening, and a tangible killing intent covered the world, causing all things to fall silent and all races to tremble. On the back of this huge white tiger, there was a burly man in the middle. He was wearing a ferret robe and a white forehead pad. He was holding a scimitar. As he shouted coldly, the white tiger under him opened its mouth and roared out a destructive light wave. Finally, an old and indifferent voice sounded in everyone's mind as if it had traveled through the universe. I, Supreme Master Gari Fu, am here. Who dares to hurt the people of my divine life palace? Chapter 43:17. A few days later. News about the Shrine of Life and the Battle of the Seven Supremes spread, as if a bomb had been dropped on a calm lake, completely exploding in the universe and detonating the entire universe. The news was that the riverbank was collapsing and flooding. At an extremely fast speed, it spread throughout the universe and swept the world. Suddenly, the universe was boiling, and peoples were shocked. Discussions about this battle can be heard in almost any corner of the universe and in any population. The 5 chief supremes of Life Shrine were born together, and they battled the 7 supremes, showing invincibility, Gefrezd shot, and defeated the master of Daewoo Temple with one finger. The Supreme. Within a day, the 7 supremes fell, rare in ancient times. The universe was full of discussions about this battle. Only then did they realize that the Life Shrine, which had been silent for many years, was so scary when they really surface. Originally, the last time the Great Axe and Bloodwave Supreme, for the purpose of killing the Swordless Temple on the Sword Warrior, has made countless people marvel at the strength of the Temple of Life. The Supreme killed Taishu Temple was worthless to mention. In the universe, there has been so much peace for too long. Therefore, the sensation caused by this battle is almost no ancients and no comers. Everyone was discussing the strength of the Life Shrine, how much more powerful it is, how powerful it is, and how terrible it has been. Of course, the most discussed, naturally, is the protagonist of this battle, Jian Wushuang. Sword Cut 2 Supreme, ancient and modern. Jian Wushuang takes the body of the master and slaughters the supreme divine realm. Jian Wushuang's battle is enough to record entering history, shocking ancient times. I dare to say that as long as Jian Wushuang does not fall, when he is promoted to the realm of honor, the universe will become an era belonging to Jian Wushuang. Countless people are crazy about it, and they regard Jian Wushuang as the future master of the universe. Sword Unparalleled has become the storm center of the entire universe. However, these discussions are still circulating among those who control the realm in the universe. The true power in the universe, the Supremes, is silent. Taishu Temple. The new god emperor's Bingxian smashed the armrest of the seat with a palm, and his face was extremely blue. He did not expect that he was regarded as an ant, and sent the prisoner dragon to the starry ancient road to slay the sword Wushuang by the way. Not only did he not die, but in a short time, he actually grew to such an amazing level that it was enough to shock the Supreme. This feeling, like everything he did, became a stepping stone for sword unparalleled, which made him extremely angry. Waste. It's all waste. What Daewoo Shrine Master can't even win a sword master who controls the realm? Bingyu Extreme clenched his fists tightly, and his mouth made a chilling murmur. Outside the main hall, the other main hall owners sighed, wondering what to say. For the first time, they somehow felt a slight regret. The habitat of the Jinwoo tribe in the solar star field. In the sun occupied by King Jinwoo. Lin have your injuries recovered? A majestic voice sounded. Immediately, he saw a middle-aged man wearing an imperial robe of fire and approaching step by step. It was the Emperor Jinwoo. Father, the baby's injuries have been recovered as much as possible, and the retreat has recently realized something, and his strength has improved. The Emperor Jinwoo was originally enlightened, and when he heard the voice, he stood up immediately and looked back and smiled. Yes, the more frustrated you can be, the more you wait for it, the better you will be. Emperor Jinwoo saw a touch of admiration. It's still a long way to go for the child. Speaking of all this, I have to thank the father for the mention that day, so that the child's heart was wide open, and then he realized the opportunity. Emperor Jinwoo said humbly, but deep in his eyes, there was a flash of unconscious pride. This pride comes from his confidence in his own strength. Now he does not say that it is comparable to the Supreme, but he can definitely take the supreme blow. After a pause, the Emperor Jinwoo continued, Father, the child is ready, and he will rise from wherever he fell. It happened that the child heard that Jian Wushuang had left the ancient road of Shinkong and planned to fight him this time. The child's self-confidence will surely defeat Jian Wushuang. After that, Emperor Jinwoo raised his chin and looked forward to Emperor Jinwoo quite expectantly. However, he found that Emperor Jinwoo's expression was strange. Father, what's wrong? Is there anything wrong with it? Is the father worried about the child's defeat? King Jinwoo scratched his head, and then smiled. Father Wang must not worry, now I am absolutely enough to make peace with sword warriors one world war. After waiting for him to finish, I saw the Emperor Jinwoo took a deep breath, interrupted his words, and slowly said, Lin you have recently retreated and missed the latest news about Jian Wushuang. Couldn't Murphy Sword Wusho have been killed? That's a pity. The Emperor Jinwoo didn't answer, but he took out a jade tube and handed it to the Emperor Jinwoo. Look at it yourself. After speaking, the Emperor Jinwoo turned away. Why is my father so strange today? Emperor Jinwoo had a doubt in his heart, and then opened the jade tube. After a while, extreme sword cut. Lian Tu Shenjing, Emperor Jinwoo opened his mouth wide, and his eyes were filled with horror. Jodi Pavilion, headquarters. A pavilion made of red tiles and bluestone is suspended in the air quietly. In the pavilion, the three supremes sat around a round table. In front of them, each had a roll of detailed information about the two supremes. Heart-killing, isn't this sword Wushuang the same kid you saved in Joey Starfield? An old man in red robes looked at the three of them, and the old man in the middle said with a smile. And this old man of Qing dynasty, who was in the Joeen Star realm, saved the sword master of the sword master Shuangshou when he first saved this son, but he did it by hand, but it did not think of this opportunity. Heartbeat Supreme heard the words, said with a smile. Among the three, the last supreme was a purple-haired boy, who said blankly, red ears, killing heart. Now we are discussing the attitude of Jodi Pavilion towards Jian Wushuang. After a moment of pause, the purple-haired boy continued to say in a deep voice, the Taro Excalibur is a heavy weapon in the universe. Now almost the entire universe is supreme, and the Taro Excalibur is eager for it. The palace exerts pressure to discuss swords. As a top force in the universe, how should we treat our attitude? Chapter 43-18 Battle of the Gods, Part 2. The entire universe seemed to have fallen into a boiling chaos. Countless words could be used to describe the horror of this battle. Countless holes appeared in the sky, and the ground was constantly being shattered. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Supreme Heavenly Dipper's expression was cold and detached. Every arrow that was shot out blocked the escape routes of the 7 great rulers, leaving bloody holes in their bodies. The battle between the Bloodwave Supreme, the South Sea Supreme, and the Blood Sky Palace's deputy palace master was even more terrifying. At this moment, everyone finally realized how terrifying the ruler Bloodwave was. 3,000 great Daos emerged from the Bloodwave Supreme's body and turned into a world of corpses and blood. The divine bodies of South Sea Supreme and the Deputy Palace Master of Blood Sky Palace were continuously destroyed as they cried out in pain. South Sea Supreme and the Deputy Hall Master of Blood Sky Hall were both high-level and top-tier Supremes in the universe, but they were unable to retaliate against the Bloodwave Supreme. They were constantly defeated and were in imminent danger. Although the Bloodwave Supreme was only a top-tier Supreme, he was much stronger than ordinary top-tier Supremes in terms of combat power. Although he seemed to be in a difficult position when he faced the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple, he had an overwhelming advantage when he was facing a supreme being of the same realm. The battle had entered a state of slaughter from the very beginning. With Supreme Heavenly Dipper cutting off their escape route, the 7 great Supremes were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, constantly being slaughtered. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath. At that moment, his divine power had finally recovered completely. Immediately after, he turned his gaze to the master of Lotus Island, the acrid and mean old woman. No one knew if it was intentional or not, but Supreme Bloodwave and the others had made the old woman stay. You should die. Jian Wushuang looked at the old woman coldly. When the old woman heard this, her expression changed and she shrieked, "Jian Wushuang, what are you doing?" Jian Wushuang did not answer. Instead, he raised the Tarot Divine Sword and swept it toward the old woman. When the old woman saw this, a cold light flashed in her eyes. She understood that the situation had already been decided. If there were no accidents, she would not be able to escape death. The only chance of survival was Jian Wushuang. If he wanted to live, there was only one way, and that was to abduct Jian Wushuang and threaten the 5 lead Supremes of the Divine Life Palace to let him leave. Thinking of this, a cold sneer appeared on the old woman's face. She muttered to herself, "Jian Wushuang, oh Jian Wushuang, since you're looking for death, don't blame me." Bang! As soon as she finished speaking, the old woman turned over her right hand and took out a lotus lamp from her interspatial ring. There was no fire on the lotus lamp, but there was a flirtatious red lotus swaying slightly, emitting a faint red light, reflecting the old woman's face, making it even uglier. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold and his black hair was flying in the air. He slashed the Tarot Divine Sword at the old woman. A brilliant sword pressure descended, instantly snatching away all the brilliant light in the area. Like a river of stars, it pressed down on the old woman. This sword cut across the sky and pierced through the sun and moon. Looking at the dazzling Tarot Divine Sword, the old woman's eyes were filled with surprise. Then, the surprise in her eyes was replaced by regret. "Old friend, I'm counting on you this time." She looked down at the red lotus lamp in her hand and muttered to herself. With a push of her hands, the red lotus lamp immediately shot out and shone brightly in the air. Countless rays of red light shot out, like the sunset glow at night, painting the starry sky a gorgeous red. The lotus core of the red lotus lamp suddenly expanded in the wind and turned into a towering red lotus that connected heaven and earth. The next moment, bang! The Tarot Divine Sword ruthlessly slashed at the red lotus. A strange scene appeared. After the Tarot Sword struck the red lotus suddenly began to absorb the endless power of the Tarot Sword like a balloon. What? Seeing this, Jian Wushuang's pupils shrank. Catcher! Catcher! In the next moment, the lotus lamp started to crack. It was like a bucket with a sealed mouth that was constantly filled with water. Finally, it could not take it anymore and exploded. Bang! With a wail, the towering lotus flower broke into pieces. The power of the Tarot Divine Sword had also disappeared. Seeing this, a touch of resentment flashed across the old woman's face. She stared at Jian Wushuang and said coldly, "Jian Wushuang, you've caused my treasure to be destroyed. You deserve to die." After she finished speaking, the old woman laughed and countless red lotus fire surged around her and rushed toward Jian Wushuang. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang was slightly surprised, but he didn't panic. This time, when he used the Tarot Divine Sword, he didn't use all of his divine power. He still had some power left, which was enough to deal with the old woman. Just as the old woman was about to catch Jian Wushuang and he was about to use the daybreak sword to end her life. Fart! The sound of an arrow breaking through the air rang out. A spear-like scarlet arrow broke through the void and pierced through the divine body of the Lotus Island Master. Along with the remaining force, it was sent flying. Ah! Arg! The old woman screamed in pain. Divine power burst out from the scarlet arrow and shattered her divine body. The master of Lotus Island had fallen. In the distance, Supreme Heavenly Dipper looked at Jian Wushuang and smiled. Little fellow, that red lotus was born from the primordial chaos and is capable of withstanding a world-destroying blow. It can be considered a life substitution talisman. Be careful. Jian Wushuang nodded at him gratefully. After the time for one incense stick to burn, Supreme Giant Axe was the first to end the battle. He turned around and strode in the direction of the Bloodwave Supreme's battle. After the time for 3 incense sticks to burn. At this point, other than the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple, the other 6 Great Supremes had been completely massacred by the joint forces of Supreme Bloodwave and the others. At this moment, the cold wind whimpered and the great Tao wailed. It was as if the heavens and earth were mourning for the 6 great rulers. The fall of 6 great masters, how shocking was this? Once it was spread, the entire universe would be shaken. After killing their respective opponents, Supreme Giant Axe, Supreme Bloodwave, and the other 2 stopped and looked into the distance with their hands behind their backs. There were only 2 people there. The Hall Master of Cosmos Temple and Supreme Master Gari Fu. At this moment, the expression of the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple was extremely ugly. He was no longer as calm as before and was staring at Supreme Master Gari Fu with fear in his eyes. Gari Fu, you can't even protect yourself now. Do you really want to waste your chance to attack for Jian Wushuang? The Palace Master of Cosmos Temple growled. Supreme Master Gari Fu's expression was neither happy nor sad when he heard this. He did not reply and only extended a finger to point at the great Cosmos Temple Master's glabella. Rumble. In an instant, a destructive aura that seemed to come from the ancient times, which caused the universe to perish, the chaos to boil, and the great Tao to be annihilated, rose in the void and slowly condense. Chapter 43:19. When the words of Supreme fell down, all the 4 Supremes present flashed their eyes. What Gavo means, they already understand. Yes. Our Shrine of Life has always been indisputable in the world, but it does not mean that anyone can step on our faces. Supreme White Tiger Supreme, the most irritable character, stood up immediately and said with a cold hum. I saw his eyes skyrocketing, taking on the meaning of warfare, and sneering. Speaking of it, this battle just happened, but just another battle. The 3 great Supremes, such as Bloodwave, although not directly declared war against the Supreme of the White Tiger, also filled with boiling warfare. They have never been afraid. Gav Supreme, seeing like this, deep in the muddy eyes, could not help flashing a touch of appreciation. Nodded his head, Supreme continued to say, the old man has been summoned to make the disciples who have traveled in the universe except the disciples in the Shinkong Ancient Road have been repatriated to the Temple of Life. At the same time, you go back and inform your disciples. During this period, the Temple of Life forbids the disciples from going out and starts preparing for war. Yes. The 4 Supremes should suddenly be. Supreme Gap said, well, and said, except for Jian Wushuang, everyone else is waiting. Let's get away. The 4 Supreme Masters heard a word, but without thinking, they left. After a while, in the Supreme Temple, there were only 2 men, Jian Wushuang and Gafu Supreme. Jian Wushuang looked up at Supreme Gav, and there was some doubt in his heart. What did Supreme Gav mean to leave him alone? Sword unparalleled, give Tai Laro Excalibur to the old man. Gafu Supreme expressed expressionlessly, indifferently. Jian Wushuang heard the words, his eyes could not help but hesitate, no more hesitation, nodded, it is good. Having said that, Jian Wushuang strode forward and pulled back the Taro Excalibur, pushing it horizontally to Jeff. Gawaf took the Taro sword, lowered his head and looked at it slightly, sighing slightly. This sword, when the old man saw it last time, the old man was still there. Goodbye this time, there were already hundreds in a blink of an eye. Chaos era. Jian Wushuang did not disturb Gafu Supreme, but stood silently. Put down the Tai Luo divine sword. Gafu Supreme looked at Jian Wushuang side by side and said, Sword Wushuang, presumably Tai Luo sword code, have you got it? Jian Wushuang nodded when he heard the words. In front of Supreme Lord Gafu, he had no intention of hiding, and replied in a respectful voice, yes. Gafu Supreme heard a slight smile and said, swords are unparalleled, and you can get Taro's heritage, which is also a chance for you. But you must remember that you must have a long-term vision. The way of others is ultimately others. You can't rely on your own way. Only by enlightening and developing your own way can you truly achieve a climate and have the qualification to reach the peak of the universe. Do you understand? Thank you for mentioning Supreme. Jian Wushuang heard the words and quickly arched. He was not a stupid person, so he naturally read it out, and the Supreme Lord gave deliberately left him, for fear that he would only rely on the power of relying on the Taro Excalibur and ignore his own growth. Good. Gafu Supreme saw this, nodded slightly, and there was a touch of relief in his eyes. Immediately, he waved his big hand on the Taro Excalibur, and retransmitted the Taro Excalibur to the sword Wushuang. The sword is unparalleled. The old man has planted a ban on the Taro Excalibur, and sealed the power and breath of the Taro Excalibur. You must not use the Taro Excalibur unless you have a last resort. Jian Wushuang took over the Taro Excalibur, and suddenly felt that his connection with the Taro Excalibur was still there, but invisible. There was an additional barrier. Before long, Gav Supreme waved, Jian Wushuang, you go. Jian Wushuang nodded, no longer delayed, the laser shot away. In the Supreme Temple, there was only one Gav Supreme left, and it gradually became quiet. Gav Supreme sat in the first place and sighed suddenly. He raised his head, his eyes seemed to penetrate the Temple of Life, and looked at the starry sky of Wudi, muttering to himself. Palace, is the old man righteous, right or wrong? Regarding the impending storm in the Temple of Life, even though he could not help but feel a little confused. Jian Wushuang flickered through the sky of the Palace of Life, suddenly causing exclaims. Brother Jian Wushuang is back. This is Brother Jian Wushuang. His breath is so strong. Some disciples who are new to the Shrine of Life have one after another. Call out. The sword has no footsteps, turned into a blaze, and passed over them. Before long, Jian Wushuang returned to the sixth mountain, belonging to his manor. In the manor, there is a small lake. A beautiful woman with a tall figure was standing by the lakeside of the manor and sprinkling some fishing bait. After the fishing bait was sprayed, it instantly caused the thousands of koi carps to tumbling like a red tide, which was quite spectacular. But this beautiful woman's brows frowned, and her look was not fluctuated, and she looked very serious. Schwanger, I have kept you waiting. Suddenly, a familiar thick voice sounded in her ear. Suddenly, this beautiful woman was throwing the bait in her right hand and froze. She turned towards the young man with a soft smile on the back and ran away. Even the bait in her hand was spilled. Fu Jun, I wait for you so hard, puff. Lung Rushuang smashed into Jian Wushuang's arms, his eyes flushed for a while. Missing for tens of thousands of years, she is unparalleled in swords and has long missed her. Especially when she heard from the mouth of the disciples of Life Shrine that Jian Wushuang died in the hands of Prison Dragon and was hunted down by the Supreme, her heart was even more severe. She wants to leave the Temple of Life countless times to find Jian Wushuang, but she knows that with her cultivation, even if she finds Jian Wushuang, she can't help Jian Wushuang at all. She has always been very sensible, therefore, she can only hold back all the urgency in her heart, waiting for Jian Wushuang's return every night and night, suffering alone. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang finally returned. Schwanger, don't worry, I'm fine. Jian Wushuang held cold as frost in his arms, and gently patted his back with his right hand, comforting his warm voice. Fu Jun, don't you leave me alone next time, okay? I'm so scared that I'll never see you again. Cold as frost lifted his head, some tearful eyes cried. Jian Wushuang saw this a sigh in my heart. It is good. At the same time, in the extreme north of the universe, a Tibetan year was covered by the nebula thunder, and no bright huge starfield was visible. A black mang reached the extreme speed, flew from a distance, then stopped suddenly, and stopped in front of this huge star field. Hymen shattered, revealing a majestic middle-aged man. He looked up at this thunderous lightning flash, a huge nebula of stars, and arched his hands in a deep voice. "Hey you, come to meet the dragons and talk about important thing." Chapter 43:20. In the extreme north of the universe, here is the taboo of the entire universe. For example, the blood river where the descendants of the dark devil come from is in this extremely northern region. It is desolate all year round and no one sets foot in it. The blood in the river is enough to wipe out everything below the Supreme. Even if the Supreme is in person, do NT dare to rush step into the blood. It is rumored that there are thousands of blood monster ancestors from the chaos prehistoric age sleeping in this blood river, but the rumors are false, and no one can say clearly. There are 9 taboo places like the blood river. There are 9 places in the extreme north of the universe. One of them is the huge star field in front of the main owner of the Daewoo Temple. This huge star field is covered by the nebula thunder all year round, cannot see any light, and is quietly suspended in the starry sky, like a grey cotton swab ball, revealing the thick breath of death. But the master of Daewoo Shrine knows that this place, named one of the 9 taboos, named Death Starfield, is one of the strongest races in the universe, the entrance to the dragon race. Rarely, the dragons were born, so few people know where the dragons' habitats are, and the owner of the Daewoo Temple happens to be one of the people who knows where the dragons are. The Dragon Clan has already formed its own realm, and the only entrance to the Dragon Clan is this Dead Star Field. In this Dead Star Field, there is a congenital death that is deadly to the Supreme. If there is no dragon token or if the dragon person invites himself, otherwise, even the Supreme enters, it will be lost under the erosion of the chaotic innate death. To die. This black feather, come to meet the dragons and talk about important things. The master of the Daewoo Shrine stepped in the void and stared tightly at this dead starfield, Shensheng said. Even if it is him, in the face of this dragon race that has been the peak race since ancient times, he does not dare to have the slightest intention. After a while, rumble. The dead starfield, like a grey-lead cloud, made a loud muffle. The next moment, I saw a faint yellow light, which was sprayed out of this dead starfield, and drove away the endless thunder nebula and the innate death of chaos, forming a passageway that was sufficient for people to pass through. "Kurowa, my lord please." A low sound of indifference, unlike human beings, came from this dead starfield. "Thank you, Dragon King." The master of Daewoo Shrine smiled slightly, and immediately stepped on it, and suddenly appeared on the channel made by Huang Guang, stepping into the dead star domain step by step. Rumble. After a while, the master of the Daewoo Temple disappeared, and the faint yellow light disappeared, and the grey nebula and thunder continued to diffuse again, covering it. Inside the Temple of Life. With the order of Supreme, after the return of all the disciples in Shinkong Ancient Road, the atmosphere of the whole life shrine gradually became dignified and severe. Everyone knows that for the Temple of Life, a great war is coming. At this moment, no one dared to relax, all of them hurry up time, quickly enlighten and practice. Jian Wushuang and Cold as Frost haven't been kept warm for a long time, and they have also declared a retreat. Although Lung Rushuang's heart was reluctant, he also knew that the overall situation was the most important. Only by constantly improving his strength could he keep up with the pace of the sword unparalleled. In an instant, 10 years passed. Inside a cabin. The sword sat cross-legged, closed his eyes slightly, and quietly combed his strength. Now, he has completely stabilized in the ultimate realm. Whether it is the strength of the divine power or the fusion of the 9 rules, he has reached the top realm of the ultimate master. However, the next question is what to do next. Jian Wushuang understood in his heart that now he wants to break into the supreme realm. There is almost no possibility, the only thing that can improve his strength in a short time, only to understand the magical power, make the power of magical power one more step. Perhaps I should try to go out of my way. Jian Wushuang murmured to himself, his eyes opened, and there was a gleam in his eyes. So, my way, what is it? What is the word? There was a deep thought in Jian Wu's eyes. Dao is a very mysterious word. Throughout the ages, Those who stood at the top of the universe have all opened up their own Tao. For example, Tai Luo Genzuan is holding a 3-foot sword and will give up his invincible kendo. Thinking about it, Jian Wushuang felt that he seemed to grasp something, but when he pondered carefully, it was like the moon in the water, he didn't realize anything. Time flows away slowly. Just as Jian Wushuang was immersed in how to comprehend the Tao, the supreme message suddenly sounded in his mind. Sword unparalleled, come quickly to the supreme temple. The tone was full of haste and dignity. Suddenly, there was a cold flash in Jian Wushuang's eyes, and the bloodwave supreme circulated to him at this time. There was only one possibility. That is, the battle against his sword unparalleled, and the entire palace of life, is about to begin. Yes. Jian Wushuang returned a message, then stood up, pushed open the door of the chamber, and rushed towards the supreme temple. After a moment, Jian Wushuang came to the supreme temple. The supreme shrine, the supreme gap sits in the first place, the supreme bloodwave, the great axe supreme, and the heavenly god, the white tiger supreme, respectively. On the sides, under the 5 of them, there are several swords in the temple of life. The supreme, who has never seen it before, wanted to come all the way out of the country, and was rushed back only after being summoned by the temple of life. All the supremes present were somewhat dignified, and Jian Wushuang asked them a good sentence, and they only responded with a slight jaw. Well, with the exception of the king of the 9 dragons and the king of the wind, who are still on the ancient road in the sky, now that everyone is here, let's talk about the situation. The expression of Supreme was a little serious. After glancing across Jian Wushuang's face, he slowly said, "The old man just got the exact information. The Taishu Temple, the Great Sun God Kingdom, and the Blood Temple, a total of 5 top forces, have joined together to send a fleet to the Temple of my life. 7 days later, will arrive at the gate of my shrine." This remark fell apart, except for Jian Wushuang. The other supremes were expressionless. I think I should have known about it. The sword unparalleled, his brow could not help but frown slightly. He did not expect that the first one to strike at him was not the Daewoo Temple, but these 5 forces. But he didn't say much. All the people present were the mainstays of the Temple of Life, and there was of course a way to come. Supreme Gav continued, this is the first battle in our Shrine of Life. Therefore, we must play the momentum of our shrine, can you understand? Yes. The audience should be loud. Seeing this, Gav Supreme nodded slightly with satisfaction, and said in a deep voice, "This battle is just their temptation. I must wait to destroy the coalition of these 5 forces outside the shrine. 3 days later, you will be levied with your old husband and set foot on the coalition." A fierce cold mang flashed from the eyes of Supreme Gap. Chapter 43:21. Starfield far from the Temple of Life. 5 cosmic battleships that swept across the void glowed with icy luster, and the sails transformed into flags were engraved with the names of the 5 major forces, constantly passing through the stars, roaring and galloping fast. They were arrogant and high-profile to the extreme. They pushed and crushed all the way, and did not make any avoidance at all. Some star thieves who were marching in the universe for repairs or roadblocks, and saw the 5 space warships, which were shocking, all changed their faces and quickly avoided them. Look. That is the battleship of the Taishu Temple. No. Not only the Temple of Two Void, but also the Great Sun God Kingdom, the Blood Heaven Temple, the Kaiyang God Kingdom, and the Starry Sword Sec. Where are these 5 forces going? Along the way, the cosmic practitioners who saw this scene from afar were exclaimed in astonishment. Whether it is the Taizian Temple, the Great Sun God Kingdom, the Starry Sword Sect, etc., they are all the top forces in the universe. On weekdays, sitting on the side of the universe, it is rare that such a large battle will run through the universe. Look where they are going is the Temple of Life. Within a short time, the news about the Taishu Temple and other 5 forces united to cut the Temple of Life, spreading at an extremely fast speed. The whole universe is uproaring. For a while, the whole universe was turbulent, and countless people were excited about it. The universe has been calm for too long. Such top-level wars have not been seen for too long. Walk around and rush to the Temple of Life. Numerous people are rushing towards the Temple of Life, holding the lively mind. At the same time, within those 5 space battleships, 5 powerful men exuding a supreme atmosphere were standing on the deck of the middle battleship and discussing in a low voice. You said, "Will I be pressured by the Temple of Life to surrender the Taro Excalibur?" A gentle and youthful man, holding a 3-legged wine glass in his hand, he gently sipped the wine channel in his mouth. He was dressed in a suit of jinyuhua and was born with a handsome appearance, unlike the Supreme of the universe, but more like a handsome son-in-law. But his title in the universe is extremely inconsistent with his appearance. Bloody Hand Slaughter of Kaiyang Divine Kingdom. In the hundreds of chaos eras he has broken through, he has destroyed hundreds of starfields, and hundreds of millions of souls died in his hands. In the country of Kaiyang God, it is second only to Kaiyang God Emperor. Well, the Palace of Life seems to be powerful, but it is only supported by the Supreme Lord Gap. In the war that year, the owner of the Palace of Life disappeared, and the palace was seriously injured. If it was not for the adult to rescue him, afraid that Gev also has fallen. Another old man, wearing a gossip robe, holding a duster in his hand, said sneer. It is reasonable to say that this dress should look like a fairy, but the old man has a raw triangular eye-hump nose and a sharp-billed monkey cheek, which makes people unhappy at first glance. However, he also has an extraordinary origin. He is a knight of the great god of the kingdom of God. He has a status of more than one person in the country of the great god. Even the young emperor of the great kingdom of God who has fallen has seen him. Give a respectful title to the teacher. I saw him glancing at the other 4 supremes and continued, "Today's Shrine of Life is like the bubble that looks gorgeous, but when it is touched, I don't believe it. The Supreme Lord Garvar dares to go all out and let the whole situation of Life Shrine be ignored. Furthermore, Your Majesty sent me here to slay the Temple of Life, and it is the second to the Taro Excalibur. The main thing is to bring the sword Wushuang back to the kingdom of God, accept the punishment of the heavens, and have respected the Emperor Shaoxi in the spirit of heaven." After he had finished speaking, another middle-aged man in cloth, with 2 bushy eyebrows, said Shen Sheng, "Yes, this time on behalf of Jianzong's crusade against life. This time, I don't really want to be the enemy of life, but I just want to conquer the Taro Excalibur. Presumably, the Supreme Lord Gap will not do it for a Taro Excalibur. Wait for me and let go." The other 2 supremes did not speak, but their faces were extremely gloomy. One of them is impressively the master of the 7th temple of the Taishu Temple, Ju Kuan, a bald old man with a skinny skin. And the last one is one of the right and left guardians of the Blood Temple, the right guardian Pluto. Well, as long as I wait quietly, then is the Temple of Life conscious. The gentle young man who started talking, looked up and drank the sake in his hands, his eyes narrowed like foxes, and there was a flash of playfulness. "Speaking of special life, I haven't killed it yet. Time flies." 5 space warships swept across the air, setting off countless winds. Prompted by the joint efforts of the 5 supreme powers, these 5 top-ranked space battleships broke out at a speed much faster than the speed of light. In a short time, they have reached the edge of the Shrine of Life, even the heavily arrayed method. The wrapped gate of the Life Shrine Palace is all at a glance. The 5 battleships stopped, the 5 supremes stepped down from the battleship, stepped on the starry sky, stared at each other, and there was a flash of cruelty in their eyes. The next moment, they spoke at the same time. "Taiko Shrine Special Envoy, come to visit the Temple of Life. Special envoys from the Great Sun God Kingdom, come to visit the Shrine of Life. Shinkong Jianzong Special Envoy, come to visit the Temple of Life. Blood Temple Special Envoy, come to visit the Temple of Life." 5 low voices, and at the same time explode outside the Temple of Life. Suddenly, the sky was shaking. Countless people who came to watch the war deliberately saw a burst of excitement on their faces. They know that the battle between the top powers, which begins with sword warriors, is about to begin. Temple of Life, Supreme Temple. The Supreme was sitting in the first place, and the other great Supremes stood under him. Jian Wushuang in a black robe, carrying the Taro Excalibur, is also here. Hearing the sound of a blast outside the shrine, everyone had a cold flash in his eyes. "All of you, with today's battle, will lay the foundation of my life temple. Gav Supreme was expressionless and slowly rose from his seat. Suddenly, a terror that crushed the universe forever and deterred the floods of the heavens and the earth circulated around the Supreme Lord of Gap. It seems that there is a monster that has been sleeping for millions of years and is waking up. Yes. Bloodwave Supreme, Jian Wushuang, and others should be astonished that there is no timidity in their eyes. This battle they are not afraid. Even outside the Supreme Temple, those ordinary life shrine disciples are not afraid. Nothing more than a battle. Let's go. Garvar Supreme nodded, stepped down from his seat, and walked towards the Temple of Life. The four Chief Supremes, such as the Bloodwave Supreme and the Giant Axe Supreme, are slightly behind half of Gap Supreme. Behind it, there are other ordinary Supremes of the Palace of Life. In the last place, there is Jian Wushuang. Dear, click in and give a good comment. The higher the score, the faster the update. Chapter 43-22. When Gav Supreme led the 5 Chief Supremes, Jian Wushuang, and more than a dozen ordinary Supremes out of the Palace of Life, many disciples of the Palace of Life were already waiting outside. They looked so stern and stood upright, they all shook their hands at the same time. I wait. I wish you Supreme Master, the victory is triumphant, and triumphant return. Their voices converged, forming a huge sound wave boiling against the sky, straight into the clouds, shaking the sky of the whole life shrine. In their expressions, there was no shrinking timidity, only extremely firm. Seeing this scene, Garvar Supreme flashed a warmth in his heart. These people will be the mainstay of the Temple of Life in the future. However, there was not much expression on his face, and he just nodded slightly in response. Jian Wushuang is mixed with many Supremes, and his face is slightly smiled. This time because of him, the Temple of Life has attracted joint forces from all parties in the universe. If it is placed in some ordinary immortal inheritance gates, it has long attracted resentment and blame from its disciples. This scene did not happen. Everyone is unwaveringly supportive of Jian Wushuang, and many supreme guards against the storm. This is all thanks to the system of the Life Shrine. Although silent, it is like a big family, bringing together many special lives wandering in the universe, supporting each other for growth and prosperity. Moreover, Jian Wushuang also saw among the many disciples of life shrines that he had been dominated by the magic wind that had been on the riverside of Wudao and had festivals with him. I haven't seen it for tens of thousands of years. The Lord of the Demon Wind has also broken through to the ultimate domination. At this moment, his edges and corners have been smoothed a lot. Looking at Jian Wushuang's eyes, he is also unswervingly supportive. This is the shrine of life that guards me, and I am willing to pay for my life. Jian Wushuang sighed in his heart. They didn't stay too much, so they walked towards the gate of the palace again. There, Yangshan Supreme turned the mountain, condensed into an adult face, and said with a serious expression, "Gap, blood, I will guard the shrine." Click and wipe. The next moment, the gate of the Temple of Life opened. Garvar Supreme walked in the first place, and the others followed behind, walking towards the starry sky step by step. There, 5 space battleships were quietly suspended, squeezing across the void, and standing in front of the gate of the shrine. 5 Supreme Masters stood with their hands, each standing on the battleship of their respective forces, sneerily looking at Gafu Supreme and others who came towards them. It's a great battle, and the Supreme of the Temple of Life is almost all out. The pupil of the great Sun God Kingdom shrank, his face shuddered, and then sneered. And the gentle man with a gentle appearance, such as jade, glanced from the faces of many Supremes, and there was a touch of greed in his eyes. He felt that the supremacy of this group of special lives was extremely strong, and if he could devour himself, cultivation would definitely increase. "Excuse me, what's the matter at my shrine?" Gav Supreme expression indifferent, and spoke lightly. The 5 Supreme Masters looked at each other, and to be honest, facing this many Supreme Masters headed by Supreme Lord Gave, anyone would be a little bit guilty. If it was weekdays, they would already greet the seniors with fear. But today is different. They represent not only themselves, but the top 5 forces behind them. They are confident that under the pressure exerted by these 5 forces together, even if they are the supreme ones, they must weigh their hearts. I saw the mung-bean eyes of the great sun god kingdom turned slightly, then stepped out, and his chest was raised and said, "Extreme Gav, you are our predecessor. We dare not offend when we come to the shrine. We are here today for one thing. That is to hand over Jian Wushuang and Taro Excalibur." Speaking of the front, the tone of this teacher is quite respectful, but when it comes to the back, the tone suddenly turns cold, full of forest cold. Yes, the Taro Excalibur is a cosmic weapon. How could it be held by a master? The middle-aged man of the Starry Sky Sword sect stepped out and stared at Jian Wushuang tightly. Boom! The two shocking swords shot from the eyes of the middle-aged man, as if condensed into a substance, forming a huge, sharp pressure toward the sword without double pressure. Jian Wushuang saw a cold hum, and knew in his heart that this time the 5 major forces cut the Temple of Life together, taking him as a breakthrough, and this man from the Starry Sword sect wanted to give him a power. This look seems unusual, but it is actually the middle-aged man's kendo origin. Once Jian Wushuang was pressed under him, Jian Wushuang's sword heart will inevitably leave a shadow. However, compared to kendo, Jian Wushuang admits that he has not lost anyone. Jian Wushuang stepped out one step, without any fear, and shot his gaze towards the middle-aged man of the starry sky. The fourth source of kendo was triggered by him for the first time. 2 swords were shot along Jian Wushuang's eyes, and they hit the eyes of the starry Zhenzong middle-aged man straight. As if the tip of a needle was against my mang, 2 lightnings that tore the night sky collided fiercely, sparking a spark. Jian Wushuang's 2-sword intentions did not fall in the slightest, but there was a faint axe to kill the dragon, and the middle-aged man's sword intention was slightly depressed. The thief is so courageous. The middle-aged man's face suddenly became extremely furious. He didn't expect that he was dear to the divine supreme divine realm, but was actually depressed by Jian Wushuang in kendo comprehension. If you don't kill this child this time, I'm afraid it will become a serious problem in the future. Just when he couldn't help but want to have another attack, he saw the gentle man of Kaiyang God Kingdom raised his hand and pressed his hand, signaled him to be quiet, and then looked at Supreme Gav, smiling and said, "You are our predecessor, someone who has contributed to that catastrophe. If it were impossible, I would not come together. My God Lord of the Kaiyang Divine Kingdom, this time sending the juniors to the Temple of Life has no other meaning. As long as you are willing to surrender Jian Wushuang and Tai Luo Divine Swords, the juniors will retreat themselves, and you can even make a promise. Do NT commit a shrine, fix everything." Having said that, he stopped talking and paused until he laughed. "Of course, if you don't want Senior Gav, no one in the world can force you. Younger people don't have this ability. But, My Majesty the King, you also know that you always have a bad temper, and you can't rub a bit of sand in your eyes. If you say something, you must do it. At that time, what will be the consequences? The younger generation will not say much." The tone of this speech is mild, but in fact it is a hidden needle, which means murder and is full of threats. When this sentence came to an end, the supremacy of the other 4 major powers all stroked their beards, apparently with the same intention. Gafu Supreme heard the words, his eyelids lifted slightly, and he looked at him with a smile. "Qianyi, are you threatening the old man?" Chapter 43-23. Threat. Juniors are naturally afraid. The gentle youth calling Qian Qian slightly arched his hands, then raised his head, staring directly at Gafu Supreme. The junior is just telling the truth. Supreme Gav nodded, glanced at the others, and asked gently, "You mean the same thing?" "Yes, if you are helpless, my great Japanese kingdom will never be opposed to the shrine." Dari Shenguo fluttered his hands to dust. Yin Yin said. The Pluto, the right guardian of the Blood Temple, who did not say a word from beginning to end, said coldly, "Let's stop talking nonsense. Gafu, I came by the order of the Lord of the Palace. As long as Tai Luo Divine Sword and Sword Warrior, even if the 2 pick up one, I will turn around and leave, and never blame it." The middle-aged man of the Shinkong Zhenzong also said in a deep voice, "Gaifu Supreme, presumably you also know that our Lord Wu Zhenxian was one of the princes of Tai Luo Zhenzun at that time. Now Tai Luo Zhenzong has passed away. Excalibur naturally belongs to my Starry Sword sect. One after another, soft or hard answers. In short, it is to persecute Gav Supreme, to surrender Jian Wushuang and Tai Luo Excalibur. When Gav Supreme heard the words, a faint smile burst into the corner of his mouth, and his dim eyes narrowed. Do you think that the old man was seriously injured in that catastrophe that year? So you have decided that the old man will take care of the overall situation, and in order to protect the Temple of Life, he will hand over the Taro Excalibur and the sword unparalleled. As soon as this remark came to an end, the 5 great powers present were slightly changed, and as Supreme Gav said, they really had the intention. Although Gav Supreme is strong, he has already been seriously injured and is about to die. It is just a tiger with a tooth pulled out. It is because of these considerations that they dare to join forces to overwhelm the Palace of Life. Do you think that the old man's recuperation for so many years has long worn away his blood, and is unwilling to be an enemy? The voice fell, and Mori Han's cold killing intention spread around the center of Gafu Supreme. All of a sudden, the 5 Supremes changed their faces. They only remembered at this time that the Supreme Lord Gav standing in front of them, in the battle of the catastrophe of that year, but the knives who have countless extreme god. Suddenly, they stared at each other, with a faint retreat in their hearts. Gaifu, do you have to risk the world and fight for the sake of being a sword invincible? Only Pluto, the right guardian of the Blood Temple, asked coldly. Gafu Supreme heard a sigh of relief and spit out only one word, kill. Huh. Suddenly the words fell. I saw the 4 chief executives standing behind him, all laughing and rising into the sky. At the time of the Holocaust War, I couldn't escape from the world. Only my life shrine fought in all directions. Now dare to threaten my shrine? A sneer from the Heavenly Supreme, a golden bow of God appeared in his hand. At the next moment, I saw the 10 fingers of the Celestial Supreme resting on the arrow string, and pulled it back slightly. A scarlet-lined arrow was automatically placed on the arrow string. Immediately afterwards, he saw Tenma Supreme release his 5 fingers, and the scarlet arrow suddenly blasted out like a cannonball, directly breaking the void and blasting towards the great Sun God Kingdom Master. Damn! The Guru's face suddenly became extremely furious. He didn't expect that this life shrine, which always seeks for peace, was so violent for the sword unparalleled that it would hurt the killer without a word. I saw him waving his right hand, and the brush in his hand immediately brushed out Dao Xianhui, welcoming the scarlet arrow that shot towards him. A shocking explosion came out. On the other side, the giant axe divine body instantly swelled, turning into an ancient giant with a huge height, holding the heavenly axe, stepping down 1 step, directly across 1,000 miles, and splitting towards the right heaven of the Blood Heaven Temple. I want to take away the sword unparalleled, first asked the axe in this hand. A sharp axe light, carrying the terrible dark yellow air, fiercely slashed at Pluto's head. The Pluto was not afraid when he saw this, and a humming sound was heard in his mouth. A black iron chain appeared under his right hand, and he flung it down suddenly, like a python swallowing the sun, and drew toward the axe supreme. On the side of the white tiger supreme, I saw him leaping into the sky, arrogant, and the sound of terror spread out in circles. His Majesty's sharp gold and white tiger opened his huge mouth, and countless red thunders gathered in his mouth, turning into a storm of extinction, towards the 7th temple owner of the Taishu Temple, and the skinny bald old man in a monk robe. Kuan Hong goes. Supreme King's face sank, his eyes twinkled, and he didn't dare to relax in any way. The right side of his hand was torn, and the void beside him was torn directly. Immediately, he saw him grabbing a hand from the void and grabbing a black magic knife. Buddha does not hold a knife, but a knife becomes a demon. Kill. A hoarse voice came out of his mouth, and when he stepped on it, he suddenly turned into a black mang and sprinted towards the white tiger supreme. There are many more ordinary supremes, who have rushed out to block this void and cut off their back road. The sword unparalleled, it is the middle-aged man who looked at the starry sky sect under the light of a change of eyes. Although this person is more powerful than me, my understanding in kendo is almost the same as mine. Just try this person. If I do use the Taro Excalibur, where is the limit? Jian Wushuang made his mind, then stepped on the foot, the black robe rolled, and suddenly turned into a black horizontal thunder between heaven and earth, step by step faster, step by step, towards the middle-aged man of the starry sword sprint away. Wu Weeping Sword appeared in his hand. Speaking of which, he lost against the Black Hawk Supreme, for a large part of the reason, because of the extermination spear in the hands of the Black Hawk Supreme, so he had no choice but to sacrifice the Taro Excalibur and kill the Black Hawk Supreme. The second beheaded Supreme did not give him the opportunity to detour a war at all, and could only use the Taro Excalibur. Therefore, until now, Jian Wushuang did not know what his true strength was, and what he had reached. This sword is unparalleled, how dare you come to kill me? The middle-aged man of that starry sky sect saw the situation, can't help but laugh for a while. Jian Wushuang, since you are looking for your own way, don't blame me for being rude. The middle-aged man sneered, and there was a killer in his eyes, and a pure white Excalibur appeared in his hands. Jian Wushuang, you die. The middle-aged man stepped hard, and suddenly turned into a sharp white man, splitting towards the sword unparalleled. Next moment, the two were black and white, and they collided fiercely. An astounding sword gas burst out, staring at the stars and swooping in all directions. Chapter 43-24. I saw that in the universe, one black, one white, and two sword-bearing figures were like a comet crashing into the earth. They collided with each other at a very fast speed, agitating endless sword energy. The Wu-crying Excalibur with no hands in the sword split on the snow-white Excalibur in the hands of the middle-aged man from the same diagonal, drawing a long string of sparks. Not broken? Is the rule extreme treasure? The middle-aged man shrank his pupils a little. You should know that the white knife sword in his hand is the ultimate treasure of the laws of chaos. He has bred dozens of chaos ages. After the weapon collided with him, he remained safe and sound. The sword is a good sword, but unfortunately people can't match it, it's wasted. The middle-aged man snorted coldly, but he didn't care. He swiped his right hand out fiercely, and the endless divine power poured out instantly, and he flung the sword unparalleled. Wow! Jian's stature receded dozens of feet backwards, his legs in the starry sky, passing through two white marks. It is truly supreme, and it is really strong. Jian Wushuang raised his head, panting slightly, and secretly said, the difference between me and this ordinary supreme is the quality of divine power. The supreme divine power unique to the supreme is far beyond ordinary divine power. It is also supreme, relying on the dependence of the universe. After thinking for a while, Jian's eyes flickered, and he sighed coldly. Since the qualitative gap cannot be surpassed, use the amount to make up. Suddenly, a majestic power reached the extreme, gathered in the hands of Jian Wushuang. After Jian Wushuang firmly stabilized the ultimate dominating realm, the strength of the divine power has suddenly reached nearly 30,000 times. Again, Jian Wushuang's black hair flew, and when he stepped, he rushed towards the middle-aged man again. Open the sky! Wu Weeping Sword trembled tens of thousands of times instantly, sending out a burst of devil crying, the voice of the Buddha chanting. The sword was cut out immediately, and it was cut off towards the middle-aged man like a shocking dragon. This sword, Amami, is to the extreme. Boy is daring. The middle-aged man smiled angrily and stepped forward. The white sword in his hand stabbed towards the sword without a pair. In the hands of the two, the Excalibur was added again. Before the middle-aged man split the sword Wushuang, he saw that Jian Wushuang had suddenly changed his tactics and once again sneered, cut the star. In an instant, thousands of energies condensed in the sword without hands, turned into a shocking sword rainbow that was nearly 5,000 feet long, and split again. This sword has a hint of Tao ? The middle-aged man's eyes narrowed for a moment, and the two shenmangs in his eyes soared again. This sun is the ultimate dominating realm. He has realized the level of the Tao, and in one move and one style, he is full of mysterious and obscure feelings. This child is so talented that it is rare in all ages. If it is not removed today, I am afraid that it will be the second Taro Sword Lord. Thoughts flashed in the eyes of the middle-aged man, and then he said in a deep voice, swordsmanship, Xinghe. The words fell, and I saw Bai Dis' sword in his hand slamming up, a dazzling galaxy, rolling out from the void, and slamming into the silver sword rainbow of Jian Wushuang. This sword is like the overthrow of the heavens and the earth. The galaxy rolls back. The power is terrifying. Countless sharp white swords, turned into swallowing dragons, crisscrossing the world, facing the silver sword rainbow of nearly 5,000 feet, circled and rolled away. Just like a large python, the bright galaxy is directly entangled with nearly 5,000 feet of silver sword rainbow. Then, Xinghe Jianqi suddenly broke out. Click and wipe. Suddenly, the silver sword rainbow of nearly 5,000 feet shattered. Is this the sword art of the Starry Sword sect? Jian Wushuang looked up like the sky that hung for 9 days, and the volume of Xinghe turned from the sword's gas was a look of wonder. This Xinghe Jianzong deserves to be known as the top force in the universe with a sword, and this sword is nearing perfection from any angle, which is not comparable to him. Jian Wushuang, let's die. Just then, the middle-aged man leaped and sneered, sword unparalleled, remember, whoever killed you, the 3 elder Faxian of Starry Sword sect is also. This sword is called Bai Yang. Almost just for an instant, this middle-aged man's previous step is still 100 miles away. The next step has appeared in front of the sword without double-sided. The white sword in his hand turned into a blank, leading the roll of the broken star sword rainbow dazzling galaxy, slashing down towards Jian Wushuang. Step forward. Jian Wushuang's face suddenly changed slightly. The sharp sword gas, before it fell, already had the appearance of cracks on the surface of his body. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang loosened Wu Wei's Excalibur with his right hand and drank lowly, "Forever night." Suddenly Wu's Excalibur disappeared, and countless thick black mist poured from the soles of Jianhui's feet, and then eroded toward the middle-aged man. The previous sword is unparalleled, and it takes some preparation time to use Yongye sword, but after he broke through the ultimate dominion and found the original heart of Kendo, using Yongye sword again is almost instantaneous. A muffled noise came out, and then I saw these thick black mists, dragging the middle-aged man who was called the 3 Elders Flying Fairy, and dragged the bright galaxy into the kingdom of the night. The elder Faxian was gone, replaced by a huge black ball exuding coldness, dullness, and stiffness. Next moment, among the black balls, elders of Faxian were angry and roared. I saw the elder Faxian driving Baiji Excalibur, ramming into the black ball, smashing the black ball roaring. A sharp sword exploded constantly, everywhere. Jian Wushuang stared at Yongye Kingdom, and had to say that the supreme strength is really beyond imagination. After Xiaocheng Kingdom became small, even the strongest invincible dominator would fall into it. It's possible to survive, but the 3 elders of Faxian are just the most ordinary supreme, but in just a few breaths of time, they will endanger the kingdom of Yongyi and be about to break this seat. With the erupting roar of the elder Faxian, the kingdom of Yongyi can no longer hold on, peeling off piece by piece. Immediately afterwards, I saw that my whole body became dry, and the hair fell off with a large part of elder Faxian jumping out. He gasped with a big mouth, staring at Jian Wushuang with a gaze on his face, and his face was iron and blue. The sword is unparalleled. This trick, this seat recognizes, is the supreme night sword of Tai Luo Supreme. Say, Tai Luo Jiandian, is it in your hands? Jian Wushuang heard the words, there was no panic on his face, and he nodded and calmly replied, yes, Tai Luo Jiandian is indeed in my hands. But, what about it? Chapter 43-25. The elder Faxian stared at Jian Wushuang. For some reason, there was a rush of jealousy in his heart that he had never noticed. He is jealous of Jian Wushuang's talents, and he finally has the power to fight against the Supreme. He was jealous of the sword Wushuang chants, and he was able to get both the Tara sword code and the Tara magic sword at the same time. This is a cosmic weapon. He was even more jealous that Jian Wushuang could make the Shrine of Life so sheltered, and let the half-footed Governance Supreme step into the coffin. For him, he was against the forces of the universe. Taking a deep breath, Elder Faxian said coldly, sword is unparalleled, you are not qualified to inherit the mantle of Tai Luo Swordmaster. Tara sword and Tara sword code should not belong to you. They should belong to my Starry Sword sect, to my Faxian. The next moment, the elder Faxian patted his right hand, and the white sword was suspended in front of him, and his black hair flew up all over him. Senhan said, "The sword is unparalleled. On the talent of Kendo, this place admits that it is not as good as you. If you break through the supreme realm, this place will turn around when you see you. Unfortunately, if you are not supreme, you will eventually be ants." Crackling. Suddenly, the elder Feitian flicked his fingers in the void, like a peeper. That white sword of the Excalibur suddenly shook violently. I saw that every time he played, the same white jade flying sword was split into the same white jade flying sword. After 7 consecutive shots, that white jade flying sword had been divided into 7, under the control of the elder Feitian. Now, like the 7 rainbows that run through the sky and the moon, they are chopped down towards the sword. Star swordsmanship, the 7 great wild slashes. The distance of 1,000 feet is just around the corner. In just a blink of an eye, these 7 white jade flying swords are like 7 meteors. The sword was unparalleled and did not dare to carelessly. The whole body's divine power was flowing wildly, and the dragon's blood secret technique was directly used to burn the divine power. It was fiercely chopped towards the 7 white jade flying sword. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's breath soared and he struck one of them with a white jade flying sword. "Come again." Jian Wushuang gave a loud scream, and the fighting in his eyes broke out, soaring directly into the sky. With each sword he slashed, the sword's chi was horrible, and the turbulence turned the surroundings into a sea of raging fury that filled the world. When the elder Feitian saw this, he sneered at the corners of his mouth, 5 fingertips, as if there were invisible silk threads to control the 7 white jade flying swords. Under the change of fingering, the 7 white jade flying swords' offensive changed abruptly and no longer opened, it turned into an angle that was tricky and vicious. In time, Jian Wushuang's response became extremely strenuous. Taking advantage of a gap, the elder Feitian combined his 5 fingers, and the 7 white jade flying swords suddenly merged into 7, reformed into a white sword, and stabbed in the position of the sword without a pair of chests. Puff! Suddenly, the sword flew backwards without a two-way flight, the body collapsed in the void, and then continued to reorganize. One sword unparalleled defeat. In the distance, some of the Supreme Palace of Life who was responsible for blocking the rear path saw the situation and shook his head slightly. Although Jian Wushuang is stronger, it is still a little younger than the top kendo strong in the universe, such as the elders taking off. There is a gap in the quality of divine power, and the result is hard work, which is unwise. Just when they hesitated to go up to help the sword unparalleled. The sword Wushuang that quickly flew backwards all the way, but moved backward suddenly. Soon, a golden light appeared. Fencing, dawn. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang disappeared, and between the heavens and the earth, there was only one gold thread, as if the Shunjian that tore the endless night, shot at the Feitian elder in a forward-looking tren. The thunder roared and the electric light shone. The void was torn directly, breaking open numerous void fragments. Jian Wushuang is shrouded in the fierce golden light, coming across the sun and the moon. This is the second form of Tai Luo Jian Dian, breaking dawn. When the elder Feitian saw this, his face changed suddenly, a feeling of palpitations, and he climbed up to his back. For the first time, when he faced the sword unparalleled, a great terror between life and death emerged. Breaking dawn is a sword power that can only be used by the Supreme. How can this be? There were countless fears on his face, and he immediately bit his teeth, and there was a decisive flash in his eyes. You have to come up with a killer, otherwise, I am afraid that I will become the 3rd Supreme who died under the sword without hand. Immediately, the elder Feitian's eyes flooded with light, and the pupils in his eyes suddenly turned into 2 small swords, slowly opening. I raise Xinghe with my sword, Xinghe sees me like this. Star swordsmanship, star sword, boom. Suddenly, the stars and stars are full of light and masterpieces. Countless channels of power from the deepest part of the stars suddenly rose into the sky, like a meteor, turned into bright stars, rushing towards the elders of Feitian. This sword moves all the stars in the sky. The power of countless stars came from the laser, continually meeting, densely packed, covering the sky and converging in the hands of the elder Feitian. At this moment, the body of the elder Feitian suddenly became transparent and clean, and he was lifted up by the stars as if he had fallen into the center of the vortex and became the master of the stars. Cut! Elder Phase Yan shouted, his expression became a bit distorted. Suddenly, a swordman gathered by the power of countless stars was cut off from the Elder Phasian. The void was torn directly by this swordman and turned into a sea of chaos. Numerous sword gas rolled up like a dragon as the sky is rolling, in the heavens and the earth, a long column of sword air supporting the sky, and the sky is formed. The towering roars turn the clouds and mists of nearly 10,000 miles into powder. The next moment, a great noise came out. This sword was severely chopped on the dawning golden light transformed by the sword unparalleled. In a short time, Jianwu's body shook violently, and the golden daybreak sword light around the whole body was constantly being abraded and cut. In the end, Jian Wushuang's breaking dawn sword was suddenly broken open, and Jian Wushuang was directly split again. Sword unparalleled, go to death with peace of mind. Elder Phase Yan's eyes were low, and he was condensed by the starry sky. He came down to the world and continued to attack Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang stared at Elder Phase Yan closely, his expression was gloomy to the extreme. Almost there. As long as he is stronger, this Elder Phasian is not his opponent, he can truly rely on the power of the Tara Excalibur to truly achieve the sword-cutting supreme. It's just a pity that it's a little worse after all. When the sword Wushuang considered whether to lift the seal of the supreme sword of Tai Luo, to kill the Elder Phase Yan, or escape. A white-haired indifferent figure suddenly swept from the edge of the sky, at a speed far faster than the Elder Phase Yan, stepped in front of the sword without double-sided. The next moment, I saw the white-haired indifferent figure, slowly raised his hand, and grabbed the swordmang that was split by the Elder Phase Yan. Chapter 43:26 Duel. Threatening. Junior naturally wouldn't dare. The gentle-looking young man called Chen Wu cupped his hands before raising his head. He looked straight at supreme martial artist Gari Fu and said, "This junior is merely stating the facts." Supreme martial artist Gari Fu nodded his head and swept his gaze across the others. He then asked indifferently, "You guys have the same intention?" "That's right. If we have no choice, the great Sun Divine Kingdom will never make an enemy of the Divine Palace." The Imperial Advisor flicked the horsetail whisk in his hand and said darkly. The right protector of the Blood Sky Palace, the Dark King, who had not said a word since the beginning, said coldly, "Cut the crap. Gari Fu, I'm here on the orders of the Hall Master. I only want the Tarot Divine Sword and Jian Wushuang. Even if I pick up one of them, I'll turn around and leave. I'll forget about the past." The middle-aged man from the Starry Sky Sword sect also said, "Supreme Master Gari Fu, I'm sure you know that our sect master, the Martial Sword Immortal, was one of the cultivation partners of the Tarot Sword Master. Now that the Tarot Sword Master has passed away, the Tarot Divine Sword naturally belongs to the Starry Sky Sword sect." The soft and hard answers came one after another. In short, they were forcing Supreme Master Gari Fu to hand over Jian Wushuang and the Tarot Divine Sword. Supreme martial artist Gari Fu's lips suddenly curled into an inexplicable smile when he heard this. His turbid eyes narrowed as he said, "Do you think that he'll hand over the Tarot Divine Sword and Jian Wushuang to protect the Divine Life Palace because I was seriously injured in the catastrophe?" As soon as he said this, the faces of the supreme beings of the 5 major forces changed slightly. Just as Supreme Master Gari Fu had said, they had indeed planned to do this. Although supreme martial artist Gari Fu was strong, he had long been seriously injured and was on the verge of death. He was just a tiger without its teeth. It was precisely because of this consideration that they dared to join forces and suppress the Divine Life Palace. "Do you think that after so many years of recuperating, I've long worn out my bloodlust and am unwilling to make an enemy of others?" As soon as he finished speaking, a cold killing intent spread out from supreme martial artist Gari Fu. In an instant, the 5 great masters' expressions changed drastically. Only now did they remember that Supreme Master Gari Fu, who was standing in front of them, had killed countless Supreme Divine Realm experts during the Great Catastrophe. Instantly, they looked at each other, and a faint feeling of retreat rose in their hearts. "Gari Fu, are you going to risk universal condemnation and start a war with our forces for a mere Jian Wushuang?" Only the right protector of the Blood Sky Palace, the Dark King, asked coldly. Hearing this, Supreme Martial Artist Gari Fu sighed lightly and only spat out a single word, kill. Bang! The moment he finished speaking, the 4 lead disciples standing behind him all laughed and rushed into the sky. During the great catastrophe, all of you hid from the world and only the Divine Life Palace fought in all directions. Now, you dare to threaten my Divine Palace? Supreme Heavenly Dipper sneered as a golden divine bow appeared in his hand. In the next moment, Supreme Heavenly Dipper placed his fingers on the bowstring and pulled it back gently. Whoosh! A scarlet arrow covered in divine patterns automatically narked itself onto the bowstring. Whoosh! Supreme Heavenly Dipper then released his fingers, and the scarlet arrow shot out like a cannonball. It broke through the void and shot toward the Imperial Advisor of the Great Sun Divine Kingdom. Damn it! The Imperial Advisor was extremely shocked and angry. He had not expected that the Divine Life Palace, which had always sought peace, would be so violent and kill Jian Wushuang without any hesitation. With a wave of his right hand, the horsetail whisk in his hand instantly emitted rays of immortal radiance, which met the scarlet arrow that was shooting at him. Bang! An earth-shattering explosion was heard. On the other side, Supreme Giant Axe's divine body expanded instantly and turned into an ancient giant that was tens of thousands of feet tall. He held the sky-splitting divine axe and took a step forward. He crossed tens of thousands of miles and hacked down at the right guardian of Blood Sky Palace, the Nether King. If you want to take Jian Wushuang away, you'll have to ask my axe first. A sharp axe light with terrifying black and yellow chi hacked at the Nether King's head. The Nether King wasn't afraid at all. He snorted coldly and flipped his right hand. A black iron chain appeared in his hand, and he gently threw it toward Supreme Giant Axe like a sun-swallowing python. As for the White Tiger Supreme Martial Artist, he leaped into the sky and roared arrogantly. Terrifying sound waves spread out in circles. The sharp metal white tiger under him opened its huge mouth, and countless red lightning gathered in its mouth, turning into a world-destroying storm. It blasted toward the 7th Hall Master of the Great Void Temple, the skinny bald elder in a monk's robe, Ju Kuan. Supreme Ju Kun's face sank, and his eyes flickered. He didn't dare to relax in the slightest. He pulled with his right hand, and the void beside him was torn apart. Then, he stretched out his hand and grabbed a black demonic blade. If a Buddha did not wield a saber, he would become a devil with a saber. Kill. A hoarse voice came out from his mouth. He took a step forward and turned into a black light, charging toward the White Tiger ruler. There were even more ordinary supreme martial artists who flew out one after another, sealing off the void and cutting off their escape routes. Jian Wushuang's eyes flickered as he looked at the middle-aged man from the Starry Sky Sword sect. Although this person's cultivation is stronger than mine, his comprehension of the way of the sword is almost the same as mine. I can use this person to test my limits if I don't use the Tarot Divine Sword. Jian Wushuang made up his mind. Then, he took a step forward and his black robe fluttered. Suddenly, he turned into a black thunderbolt between heaven and earth. Step by step, he sped up and dashed toward the middle-aged man from the Starry Sky Sword sect. The Wuchi Divine Sword appeared in his hand. Speaking of which, a large part of the reason why he couldn't defeat Black Eagle Ruler was because of the god-slaying spear in his hands. Thus, he had no choice but to use the Tarot Divine Sword to kill Black Eagle Ruler. As for the second supreme martial artist, he didn't give him a chance to fight in a roundabout way. He could only use the Tarot Divine Sword. Therefore, until now, Jian Wushuang still did not know what his real strength was. Jian Wushuang dared to kill me? The middle-aged man from the Starry Sky Sword sect couldn't help but laugh in anger. Jian Wushuang, since you're looking for death, don't blame me for being impolite. The middle-aged man laughed coldly as a murderous look appeared in his eyes. A pure white divine sword appeared in his hand. Jian Wushuang, go to hell. The middle-aged man took a heavy step forward and turned into a sharp white light, slashing toward Jian Wushuang. The next moment, the two, one black and one white, collided together. An earth-shattering sword chi exploded and swept across the starry sky. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.